Hi, I'm Jen, and you're listening to the Shadow Sanctuary, where I dig into the history of haunted locations to try and find a correlation between historical fact and paranormal experience. Is there a reason for the haunting? Why does energy stay? Keep listening to find out more. Welcome to the Shadow Sanctuary. I'm your host, Jen, and tonight I'm going to tell you about Lafayette Square in Washington, D.C. So let's get into it. The Residence Act in 1790 established Washington, D.C. as the nation's capital on land along the Potomac River, a compromise between northern and southern states. President George Washington selected the exact site. In 1791, French architect Pierre Charles L'Enfant was commissioned to design the city with a grand plan of wide avenues and public squares. Lafayette Square was established as part of the original 88-acre President's Park. The 18th century uses of the square included a family graveyard, an apple orchard, a racetrack, and a market. In 1800, the federal government officially moved to Washington, D.C. from its temporary location in Philadelphia and purchased Lafayette Square as part of the White House grounds, and the workers, including enslaved African Americans, camped there. President Thomas Jefferson ordered Pennsylvania Avenue cut through President's Park and in 1804 designated the area as public. 1818 saw the square become one of the most fashionable and prominent neighborhoods. In 1824, the Marquis de Lafayette was touring the country, and President's Park was renamed Lafayette Square in his honor. In 1851, President Millard Fillmore commissioned landscape designer Andrew Jackson Downing, who redesigned the square. Lafayette Square, the area directly north of the White House, is frequently considered a ghostly site. On February 27, 1859, a murder occurred in broad daylight in Lafayette Square. Representative Daniel Sickles of New York shot United States District Attorney Philip Barton Key. Sickles and his wife Teresa lived in a home on the west side of the square, now called Jackson Place. Key, a widower, made the acquaintance of Teresa through Congressman Sickles. Philip and Teresa were often seen around town together, and Daniel Sickles seemed not to know about the affair. On the night of February 24th, 1859, Sickles received an anonymous note about his wife's infidelity. On the day of the 27th, Sickles' first shot missed Philip Key. However, the next shot hit its mark. He begged for his life as he fell to the ground, but Sickles shot him two more times at close range. He was carried by bystanders to Washington Club, where he died from his wounds. Sickles claimed temporary insanity, and a jury acquitted him. Interestingly enough, the ghost of Philip Key haunts Lafayette Square, looking for Daniel Sickles. Second only to the Key murder in Lafayette Square is the demise of famous naval war hero Commodore Stephen Decatur Jr., a dashing military officer who seemed to have the world in his hand in 1819 when he built the first residential home on Lafayette Square. However, Decatur was drawn into a festering dispute with Commodore James Barron. Decatur declined Barron's reinstatement to the Navy in 1818. Barron edged Decatur towards a duel. The duel took place on Wednesday, March 22nd, 1820, in Bladensburg, Maryland. Both were wounded upon burst fire. Decatur was hit in the stomach, and he was transported back to his house on Lafayette Square, where he died at 10:30 that evening. The ghost of Stephen Decatur is seen peering out of a second floor window of Decatur House with a pained look on his face. The last story of untimely death in Lafayette Square is the tragic tale of Mary and Clover Adams. Marion Clover Adams married historian, writer, and presidential candidate Henry Adams in 1872. Clover became depressed after the death of her father. She took her own life in 1885, swallowing potassium cyanide that she had used to develop photographs. Henry and Clover lived in a house on H Street, which is now the site of the Hay Adams Hotel in Lafayette Square. Given the tragic nature of her death, it is no wonder that the ghost of Clover Adams has appeared inside of the hotel, which now occupies the site of the house where she died. A female spirit is often heard crying in the month of December near the anniversary of Clover's death. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to check us out on Facebook for more information on upcoming episodes. As always, don't let the eerie vibes fade too quickly. Stay haunted, my friends.